Congratulations, guys. We've made it to episode 3. Welcome back to
Isn't that
another
crazy?
episode of Real Estate Served on the Rocks. Jameson, what do you think of our new name?
I like it because it's served on the rocks. We're in Castle Rock. It's part of the Rocky Mountains. I think it makes sense. It flows a little bit. I think the logo, if you guys saw it, looks pretty good. Hopefully, give us some feedback. But episode 3.
I know, kind of crazy. Just so that we're clear,
Yep.
we did a little bit research into our first name. It turns out there was another Real Estate on the Rocks, so we made a quick audible, and luckily
Omaha.
When it was quick, it was quick. I didn't even know about it. I'm telling everybody, Real Estate on the Rocks.
Yeah. So
Hey, Oscar, it's Real Estate Served on the Rocks.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
Smoother.
the cool thing is it coincided with the new logo, which I think makes more sense. I appreciate the feedback on it. But yeah, I'm here with Jameson Amoros,
What's happening, guys?
Oscar Ibarra. He's back from San Diego.
I'm back.
How was San Diego, man?
It was good. It was hot. Went took the kids over to Disney and went on the hottest day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
So that was awesome.
So not awesome?
No.
That's
It was good. It was fun.
I'm glad you got to take the kids out, man. It's always good
It was
to
great.
get
That's
away,
great.
disconnect,
That's
and
what it's about, right?
have some fun, 100%. So today's topic that we wanted to jump into is going to be solar panels and how it relates to real estate. Going to dive in a little bit to like energy costs, what's affecting that, and why people are starting to call us and ask us about it. It's quite confusing in a lot of ways. But before we jump into that, Jameson, would you like to introduce our bourbon of the week?
Yeah, so today we are tasting Outlaw Legend, which kind of cool little backstory about this. This is actually based out of Castle Rock, Colorado. So it is a distillery here. The distillery itself, what was the distillery on this one again? It was the
Mystic Mountain
Mystic Mountain Distillery. So shout out to them. This bottle is 102 of 250. So limited release. I'm excited for it. A couple of fun facts. So it is aged 3 years, and it is distilled specifically on Veterans Day, which is kind of a cool thing that they do. Based out of Castle Rock. Supposedly has some chocolate and caramel notes. I have yet to taste chocolate and whiskey, so we'll find out. But
Palate's trying to get refined. I mean, sometimes I'm just like, I can't taste anything.
it's like wine, though, right?
Right.
Like if you ever go to like a sommelier, like I did one of those classes before, and I went through like an hour and a half of tasting wine. And everyone's like, you have to taste the tannins, and you got to do all these different things. I tasted wine.
Yeah, you're
better
tasting
wine,
and spitting,
right?
right? You're like,
Yeah, I tasted better wine. Like someone was better, someone was worse. And with whiskey, if it's smooth, I can drink it. I'm just, I'm getting used to the nuances of different barrel aged and different things like that.
At this point, I'm getting better with the subtleness of it.
Yeah.
I do taste the tobacco. I taste, and I had a flavor wheel
Okay.
that guides you and kind of like trains your brain. Okay, this is what I'm tasting.
Yeah. See, that's what I think. That's what I need. It'd actually be fun. Future podcast idea. Keep this in mind. Maybe a whole whiskey tasting podcast.
Yeah, I think we could absolutely do that. In fact, we're probably going to do a taping in a new location next week or the week
Ooh,
after.
I heard about this.
In actually a bourbon / like whiskey club, which is
Ooh.
pretty neat. I met the gentleman who owns the place. His name's John. Amazing guy. He's very
I'm gonna
down
pour
to
this while
earth.
Jason's talking.
Please do. And he said that this is his favorite one he makes, and I'm pumped to try it. It's been hard to track down. I got lucky in Colorado Springs, found a bottle on the shelf.
A little ASMR for you guys while I'm pouring this.
Yeah. So one thing I first noticed when you guys talk about taste, for whatever reason, like my sense of smell usually leads me to what it tastes like. So try that one first, and then the color. So see how the color is kind of light, almost looks like a Scotch.
Yep,
That's the three. That's the 3 year.
Right, it's
It
the
has
younger
younger
bourbons.
one.
Right.
So basically, as they barrel age, you get a little bit darker.
Yep. And it's small batch, meaning they took a couple of barrels, 4 or 5 barrels, blended those barrels, then put them in a different barrel, and then that's what they created. So, cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers, boys.
Glad to be back.
I do taste the caramel right away.
You know what? I actually do taste the caramel as well. I was
Yeah.
just about to say
Do
that.
you smell it too?
That is,
I taste vanilla,
Vanilla, yeah.
sweeter.
yeah, I
That's
do
good.
taste the caramel on this one actually.
Yeah.
That is extremely smooth.
Wasn't it good?
Like, holy shit, that is smooth.
Yeah.
And again, most of the bourbons that we're drinking are 90 proof plus.
Yeah, this one.
is 96, I
it's the
believe.
same thing, right?
96 proof.
Yeah, 48% alcohol, 96 proof. Man,
Yeah, and we'll put some information in the pod here.
I like
so
it.
if you wanted to try this one, highly recommend. This is really good. I'm impressed.
It's really good.
Wow, did not expect that from me.
yeah. I'm not gonna do a rocks rating yet, but I got a feeling out of the 3, It's going to fare well.
Yeah.
Well, and it was limited release, so you were like, well, should
True.
we open it? Should we not open it? And I'm glad we opened it.
No, absolutely.
So, JC, do you know where this distillery is located in Castle Rock specifically, by chance?
He actually has a tasting room up in Thornton.
Okay.
But they're in the process of building a tasting house in Castle Rock. If you know Castle Rock, it's sort of by DCF Guns.
Got it.
COVID sort of delayed everything. But yeah, that's where they're going to start.
Can you get this outside of Colorado?
You can. Yeah, they have an extended distribution network.
Perfect.
But and they're going to be at a lot of festivals and fairs. So they're going to get their name Outlaw. They're going to be at a lot of biker events. So they'll be at Sturgis. They'll have a tent set up. Cool. And different things like that. So,
so if you guys are listening outside of Colorado, you can absolutely pick this up.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link down to the information because I highly recommend checking out these local people. John's an awesome guy, man. He's just you meet him, you wouldn't expect he has this, and super cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
The quick little. I did try the one before this one. It's a peach. So I've never been a flavored bourbon.
No, I saw they do peanut butter as well.
Yeah, so it's actually really good. So.
Peanut butter whiskey is dangerous, by the way.
It is.
There's actually in San Diego. That's one of the first distillers of peanut butter whiskey.
I didn't know.
Screwball.
Oh, I didn't know it was down there.
Screwball's in San Diego.
So as always, as we drink our bourbon and enjoy it, a lot of times we have to drink it because we're talking about topics that might seem a little painful.
Right.
And I would ask you, gentlemen, what have you seen lately with your energy bills?
It went up. Mine, I think I'm at 30%.
30% up? Okay.
30% up.
Jameson?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, we went up, I think 25, 30% month over month from last month until this month. So it's hurt a little bit.
Yeah. You add inflation, which we all know is going on, and stuff we talked about the previous 2 weeks. Now your energy bill that you're used to being in Colorado, we've been lucky. Like we were the 50th, ranked 50th in energy costs, meaning like our costs were only more expensive than 2 other states.
Yep.
Which are? Do you know?
No. Why are you asking me these states?
I like asking stats because I'm the
you
worst
guys,
at stats.
You guys keep talking. I'll look it up. But just
Jameson's
distract
a
the
stat
audience
man.
for a second.
He is the stat man.
You guys right here, pay attention to these two. I'm going to look at some stuff.
I just know historically we've never had to really worry about it because we've been relatively low, not relatively, extremely low compared to the rest of the country. But lately we've been getting a bunch of phone calls. We're seeing some information on social media, people frustrated, and understandably so. In some cases, the bills have gone up 50% year over year. So whatever it was last year, 50% higher than that. So let's get into a couple of the reasons why. So, Oscar, you want to explain a little bit about what's going on?
Well, again, stat man, but you were saying that it had to do with the war, had to do with a little bit of inflation. Tell us why.
So, costs are very much like energy costs are very much affected by global connections and different things happening around the world because of. So right now, like Russia is one of the largest producing countries of fossil fuels, so gas, oil, whatever. So if countries decide they don't want to buy energy from Russia, then that energy then has to be sourced by other places. And when you take away one of the largest suppliers of energy in the world, it also will affect everything at home.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest effects. The other one is environmental fluctuations that we can't quite predict. So, for example, in February of this last year, we had a 4-day period, which was like a crazy freeze, essentially across the south Midwest of the country.
One of the warmest states froze.
Yeah, Texas basically froze over for 4 days.
You know that saying, when hell freezes over?
That was Texas.
Yeah.
Right?
No offense to Texas.
I love Texas.
No offense to Texas, but y'all froze over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just saying.
And it was not accounted for, right?
No.
And I'm going to be asking the questions because these two did a ton of research. I was still on vacation mode. So, I'm going to ask you the questions because I'd like to know too.
The biggest fluctuation was in natural gas prices. So basically in that 4-day period when the middle of the country froze over, on average, we were the cost of natural gas was $2.8 million per BTU units used. That's what normally it is. And that 4-day period, it actually jumped up to $23.8 million per BTUs used.
What's the percentage on that?
That's like over 20,000% increase.
Wow.
That's insane.
Wow.
It's insane.
That's
So
a lot.
For a very small period of time.
yeah, and we heard all the stories in the news where like energy costs in Texas are going up,
Yep.
and they're on their own grid, and it's really more challenging. Colorado, we're lucky; we always have people looking out for us, so there's actually protections for us not to get hit with those
Right.
Fluctuations. But basically, the energy companies took the hit on that.
Yep.
And that equated to roughly $677 million in added costs to these energy companies.
That's crazy.
So what
So
were
they ate.
And
I
they
mean,
ate
They
those
ate it.
costs.
They ate it.
Yep,
They ate it right
they ate
there.
those costs.
So now they've talked to legislation, and for the most part, they're getting approved the ability to pass that cost on to us, the consumers who use that energy.
Who
during
made that
period.
determination?
What do you mean?
The man.
The man.
The man
Yeah.
did.
The man did.
The
Yeah.
man did.
So not all of them have been approved, right? So XL, the largest energy provider in the
Yep.
state,
Colorado.
they still haven't had their approval on it. But basically, what it comes down to is in a 5-month period that they just started last month,
Yes.
we're going to see an increase.
But you guys saw that, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
If
we're
you
going
guys pay
to
attention to your bills.
we're going to see an
energy bills.
increase in energy costs, and the biggest month that's going to affect us is going to be in December.
Yep.
And so we should all feel between a 44 and a 70% increase in our energy bill in December.
Yep.
And again, I'm on a co-op. I think you two are as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was still there.
Yep.
Yep,
I was still, I think I'm 26, 27%.
Today.
But it was
Yeah.
still there today.
Yeah.
So you're saying we're going to increase another 50%.
No, I'm saying from December 2021
It's going
to
to,
December 2022, you should see roughly a 49% increase in your energy bill.
so the 27 plus, I'm going to go up to 40, 50%.
Correct.
So another 20% or so.
Correct. 25%.
Okay.
Yeah.
depending
If you
on-
talk to Excel, and they did a pretty good interview a couple months ago, they're anticipating $16 to $25 a month, somewhere around there, for increase in energy bills for the average household. Right now,
Is there a term on that?
until they pay off what they're indebted, right?
Okay.
Because that cost they ate. I mean, we'd love to see it. I think they said 5 to 7 months of.
about 5-month period, they want
Somewhere
to
on there.
peanut butter spread it.
Yep. So on Peter spread it, we'll see though, right? Because you're still talking inflation, and you're still talking ongoing conflict in Ukraine and Russia. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen that may elongate that a little bit. So we're hoping not. But all we can tell you is that be prepared for that type of cost increase over the next 5 to 7 months. And again, it's people working from home. If people go back to the office, things can fluctuate based on usage. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months, but that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's, I think a good point you hit. So now you have more people at home working from home
Yep.
using
Yeah.
utilities. You have obviously the environmental issues that cause you can't control a cold storm that happened.
Right.
You have a conflict across the on the other side of the world that's going to affect supply demand, and then you have the natural increase in costs over time. And then there's a couple other like legislative issues that have happened across the country. So whether it be moving to a more renewable source of energy and shutting down coal plants, or raising costs to help lower income families afford whatever, like all this is sort of coming to a head. And the question keeps getting asked, especially if you think about cost of
How
gas.
do I remedy that?
Yeah, how do we fix that? What are the options? Gas prices are high. What about an electric car?
Mhm.
So those things start to come up, and people start asking us the question, hey, Colorado has 300 sunny days a year, more than Southern California. Does solar make sense?
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's an important distinction too, right? The whole purpose of what we're talking about today is not to get into whether or not green energy is the future, if it's worth it, the costs that are associated with it. Our purpose is to give you guys, as much information around what we see from a real estate standpoint, so that you guys can make a decision. Because if you drive around any of a lot of the new build communities, right? Lennar, Meritage, Richmond's starting to do it. They're including solar panels onto some of their homes.
And
what
not,
does
not
that
just
mean from a
including,
consumer?
they're no option.
Yeah,
We're
including is
building-
in they're there.
They're
Yes.
building
Yep.
with it. It's
Yep.
not an option.
Yep.
We're going to build the house with solar panels.
Right.
And what does that mean?
Yeah, and as a consumer, I mean that's a big. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of agreements that you guys have to sign if you're looking at new builds, where you say, "Hey, I'm going to get solar energy, but does it make sense for me?" And our job, hopefully today, is to give you guys enough, just food for thought
Right.
to make an educated decision if it's right for you guys, right? Because the fact of the matter is, like JC alluded to, energy costs are going up. That's just that is a fact. The current administration has signed into a massive bill pushing us towards green energy with a ton of tax incentives, which, whether or not you agree with it, is going to incentivize people, companies, and industries to go greener, right? So, and you'll always have a choice. but at this point, what makes sense for you guys. So if you're following along at home, take notes. There's a lot of information we're going to go over, a lot of different options, and we just hopefully want to make it a little bit clearer for you guys going forward.
The big picture, right? We're going to do the basics, big picture, and when it comes down to it, fine line. What are you signing with these things?
Yeah, exactly.
Give you the most information that's most relevant for you. The reality is, solar is not going to go away in real estate.
No, it's only going to get better.
Unless the sun disappears.
Wow.
It's
a whole
we got to think about 300 billion
Did we just
years.
get missed by like a meteor?
I think so. Yeah, you know what? I think we actually crashed something into a meter, I think is what happened.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's a whole other
Elon's
conversation.
always doing
That was
something.
that was a movie, guys. That was Armageddon.
Elon's always like, you know what? Let's just go do something weird. Let's go crash something into a meteor. So, but like Oscar said, builders are putting panels on homes.
Mm-hmm.
The governments and different entities are going to be incentivizing putting panels on houses. We just want to make sure that if you're going to go buy a house with panels, or you want to put panels on your house, you are going to make the best decision with the information that's available to you, so that you can see the benefits, or maybe it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Right.
So let's say you're going to get panels. What are some of the options for getting them on your home?
You could buy them outright.
Yep. James, what else?
You could lease them.
Yep.
Or you could do what's called a power purchase agreement, in which
PPA.
case somebody, PPA, as it's known in the industry.
Break that one down first. Break down PPA first.
So a power purchase agreement essentially is a third party owns the panels, and they come to you, the consumer. That's either, and the beauty of it is you can either be owning, you can be renting. You don't have to own the house itself. They use you as what we call a host, and they say, hey, we are going to give you energy at a certain fixed rate per kilowatt hour used, right?
Yep.
And that rate will never change per kilowatt hour used.
And kilowatt hours, like how would you
Kilowatt
explain?
hours essentially is how much power your household uses within certain time frames as you go throughout the day, right?
Perfect.
You'll hear things like peak hours, so on and so forth. In which case,
it's the cost of the energy you're
yeah,
using.
basically it's like if you fill up your car with gas, at that point, I'm going to pay $3.69 a gallon for my gas.
It's your price per gallon.
And it's my price per gallon, right?
Love it.
It's essentially the same thing for solar panels, really any energy coming into the home.
And the benefit, so with the price per gallon, the way that they've changed the power rating in Colorado is, and this is across the country for the most part, is
Yes.
based on supply and demand and that particular time you're using it, the price per gallon changes.
Correct.
So like at 2 o'clock in the morning, the price per gallon is a lot less than 6 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yeah. So think about it like Lyft and Uber, right? If any of you guys have taken Lyft and Uber before and you're downtown, pick a metropolitan area, you take an Uber at 7 p.m., right?
After Nuggets game.
To a Nuggets game,
To
it
a
might
Nuggets
cost you $110. Then you leave, you go out to the bars, you hang out, maybe you have some Outlaw Legend because you found it at a whiskey bar downtown, and you decide to leave at 2 a.m. What's that same Uber cost at 2 o'clock in the morning? It costs $300 to go the same the same distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how most of the energy equations work when it comes to how much they charge the consumer. With a power purchase agreement, essentially that Uber and Lyft drive stays the same per mile that you take it, no matter what. It just depends on how much you use it.
Which is cool information. We started comparing our households,
Yes.
and my household uses the most kilowatt usage during peak time.
Yep.
Which
Correct.
means, Oscar, leave your house during peak time.
No,
bro.
not my family needs to leave the house during peak time. Then you go do some stuff,
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. So to real life example, right? We talked about that a couple times. So Oscar and I's house are relatively similar. Actually, his house is bigger. Family size, you have one more family member than us.
Right.
We used more power, but we used it in not the peak
Different
times
hours, right.
compared to Oscar's family, and our bills are about the same.
Right. And I have a stay-at-home mom, so they're constantly there during peak hours,
Yeah.
and then kids are asleep at a certain time, and then we don't really do much after that.
Yeah. Makes
So it's
Also,
our bills were similar, but we use different
Use it at different times.
times, and the peak time is costing me more money.
And that's where the PPA comes into play. Is you're going to pay the same amount for the energy no matter when you use it.
You're
Right.
just going to pay for the amount of energy you use, if that makes sense to
at
you
a
guys.
set rate,
At a set rate.
and it's usually below what the normal would be.
Correct. If I take an Uber 10 miles, whatever that rate is going to be the same. If I take that same Uber 30 miles, the rate is going to be the same. I'm going to pay more because I'm using the Uber longer.
Correct.
Versus the other way that we talked about is if I use that 10-mile Uber at 3 o'clock in the afternoon versus 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be vastly different.
Yes.
So that's the biggest thing. And then there's no upfront cost because essentially the third party is using you as the host, so you don't have to pay for the actual solar unit, which is what we're seeing with Lennar as one of probably the better examples here in Colorado. But nationwide, that's what builders are starting to do, is the power purchase agreements.
Love it. And just a weird question. So what's the highest you've ever paid for an Uber on Surge?
Oh. Well, I like going to the Nuggets game. I have Nuggets season tickets. It was $20.
Which, by the way, hold on real quick before we get into this. Are we excited about the Nuggets?
I'm very excited. I'm a Nuggets fan. Everybody's like Broncos. I love my Broncos. I love all my. I love all the teams, but I am a
the Sharps
Nuggets
have us
fan.
as the fourth favorite to win the title this year.
There we have a great team. I'm excited.
Yeah.
My Warriors have. Do you see their projected wins? By the way,
great
41
team.
wins.
You know what?
That's
Your
it?
Warriors are a great team.
Shortchanging Steph Curry, my friends.
So what about the Uber? I'm just curious.
This is now that I moved to Castle Rock. Uber Surge was like, I think $100 and something.
Dude, I don't know if you've known this story. JC and I have gotten kicked out of an Uber because not for the reason you guys think.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with booze. It was
well, actually, I have a 4.95 rating on Uber.
Yeah, our rating's great.
I have a 4.9.
But the problem with living in Castle Rock is sometimes people just don't want to take you all the way down to Castle Rock. So we've gotten into an Uber.
The guy said, I didn't know I was going this far.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
That's what
our
he
guy
told
said
me.
that same thing, but then kicked us out at like Second University. So for those of you guys outside of the state that we're listening to, we got to go about 45 miles, and the dude took us like 10.
Yeah.
And then at 2 o'clock in the morning, kicked us out and goes, yeah, sorry, I'm not driving back down to Castle Rock. So just as a fun aside with Uber surcharges,
his car,
even
his
if you
rules.
pay $400 to get down to Castle Rock, you may not make it. You never know.
Yeah. So my wife's company, she works for Zillow, and we went to a holiday party downtown. And luckily, the company paid for the Uber that night, so we put it on the company tab.
Oh, nice.
We had a $500 Uber
Oh, wow.
from downtown Denver.
Would you guys take a goddamn limousine?
No, it
Uber
was a
Black?
Honda Accord
it
with
was-
leather seats?
It was only 2 of them. They did Uber XL
I think
Black.
it was a Kia or something like that. I don't know. So, anyways, back to our. I'm just curious.
Did you pay off his loan? It's a Kia.
It was 6 months payments on the lease. Speaking of lease, so that's the next option on ownership for panels.
So what does that mean, JC?
And again, the PPA, you're buying them. You're buying it with the PPA, or are you just
so
it's-
with
So
the
PPA is
PPA
owned by
is
the
it's
third
owned by a
party.
third party company.
right? But is it a term to buy?
Nope.
No. So it's
It's a lease
just
that runs anywhere from 20 to 25 years, and that's it.
okay.
Basically,
They own it. They get the tax
So the
credits
buy
for
is
it. and
buy
everything.
right out,
Yep.
with whether it's
Yeah.
termed out or not.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So the PPA essentially, the company who puts them on your house owns them.
Right.
They're selling you that energy at a set price per usage, no matter what day of the time you use it. But you're going to know what you're going to pay for energy, so it's predictable. Whereas every year, like right now, we found out this year, our energy costs going to be 50% higher in December.
Yep.
You wouldn't have that problem on the electric side. Natural gas would change, but on the electric side, you wouldn't have that fluctuation like you and I and Jameson would experience. Now with the lease, it's slightly different. So the lease is they're going to put the third-party company is going to put the panels on your house, and you're going to pay a set fee per month for those panels.
No matter how much or how little energy you use.
100%.
Yes.
So you can use. I mean, this is where it's kind of neat if you had a electric car or multiple electric cars.
Correct.
You plug that thing
If you're
in.
an energy or a electrical energy dependent home,
Crypto farming.
yes.
You put panels
Jeez.
on you put panels on your house. You're going to pay the lease fee for the set duration, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever it may be.
Yep.
And that's what your monthly payment will be forever and for always.
Yep.
Or in the duration of that
Yeah.
contract.
So to summarize real quick, right, if you guys are following along, the power purchase agreement versus a lease, there's a very, very large difference. Both of them are owned by a third party, right? The difference is on a power purchase agreement, you pay a set amount per kilowatt hour, and then you get charged as you go above and beyond the usage. So if your usage fluctuates a month, your payment's going to fluctuate per month based on how much you use. With a lease, you are paying a monthly flat rate, which means that if you use more 1 month, you're not going to get charged more. If you use less 1 month, you're not going to get charged less.
So flat fee.
Flat fee versus
lease,
flat
and
fee
then
lease.
PPA.
Yep.
It's
Static.
static.
Based on
Static,
usage.
but if I use less 1
An
month and
agreement,
more
if you
1
will.
month, then I'm going to pay more 1 month. I may pay less the second month. With a lease, it's all the same no matter what. So that's why we talk about if you're a consumer, you have kids that are gaming and you've got a work from home office and you've got 2 Teslas and a Polestar, then these are the things that you want to ask questions about as far as what makes the most sense to you. If you want something that's going to be a flat rate, then the lease is the way to go. If you want something that's going to be a flat rate per kilowatt hour, then a PPA is the way to go. The beauty of both of them is you don't pay any upfront cost for the actual equipment itself.
Correct.
But you don't get any tax benefits, right?
Correct.
Yes,
exactly,
correct.
because you don't own them. So now that brings us to the third one, which is owning
Buying
or
them outright.
financing.
Yeah. So when you buy them outright, it's basically what it sounds like. You're going to pay for the panels in two ways. You can just pay cash. So in Colorado, the average solar system costs 13 to 18K, depending on your
The servicer.
Well, the size of the roof, right? Because you're paying for panels
Right.
and the surface of your roof. If you have a ranch house, which is larger surface area, it might cost you more. But keep in mind, the more panels you have, the more energy you can draw, which is beneficial. And the other option with buying, you can finance them.
Now, with that said,
Mhm.
with the leasing and PPA, can you use batteries?
No.
Can you store?
You
No.
cannot.
Okay.
No. And that is something that Oscar brings up a great point,
Great point,
right? Because
Oscar.
what's happening right now, and I got to look at the stat, so I'm going to give you a ballpark. It's not going to be exact, but right now there's only about 3 to 4% of solar panel systems on houses that are paired with batteries, which a battery for you guys is just a way to store the energy, right? And you can't do that if you're leasing or a PPA because the third-party company essentially sells the excess power that your solar panels draw to the grid. So they don't want you holding some of that for yourself. But if you purchase, right, or you finance, then that gives you the option to actually put in a battery pack, which right now I think they average about 3 kilowatt hours per storage.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah, and that's there's a pros and cons of that, but it is getting more and more pertinent in today's world. You know, Tesla's got a battery pack that they sell.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ones, but yes, if you are leasing or if you have a power purchase agreement, you cannot have a battery. If you are purchasing or financing because you own the system, you can have a battery.
Yeah, and the battery is where it changes the whole game.
Yes, it does.
So now, assuming you have a really nice array of panels on the top of your house that you own or are financing to own, you have a battery backup. Let's say the power goes out.
Yep.
Which
You're not dependent.
certain parts of the country, i.e. California, Texas, when it got cold, the Northeast. So
You're going to start seeing it
York,
more in Arizona and in Nevada, New Mexico as the temperature continues to rise.
You're going to now have the ability to create your own power with panels, store it, and use it at your will.
Mm-hmm. And I think a quick side note, right, as we're talking about this, guys, the reason we're bringing it up is, so if I were to take a poll and ask, 100 households what their average energy bill was, what do you guys think the percentage would be able to tell me to the dollar, like what it is?
Well, it's funny you say that. We threw this question around, 2 days ago when we started talking about this topic?
Yeah.
And first off, I didn't know my password to log in.
So
I had to reset
point number one.
Know what you're paying.
Yeah. And then
JC's been hacked, by the way. It happens.
His password is password.
probably. And then when we looked at it, we're like, oh my God.
Right. But the reason that is because, I'm on auto pay.
Yep.
Right?
I'm on auto pay.
Cool. So, kudos to the...
When I found out it was $285 a month, that's insane.
Yeah, but kudos to the energy companies for saying, hey, by the way, this is what's going to happen. I mean, they should, right? It's transparency and there's rules and regulations and things that they need to make sure that we understand. But the reason we're bringing this up is as we start to see this kind of shift from fossil fuels to potential green energy, I think it's important for anybody that's watching to make sure you guys take a look at your utility bills.
Yes. And it's interesting. Like I said, I looked at mine and I was like, whoa.
Oscar's like, I'm going to kick the family out.
No, I'm going to put us off switch. I'm click off.
Okay.
Well, and also, when you think about
next episode is Doomsdayers featuring Oscar.
Doomsday Survivors.
Next episode,
Oscar
he's getting a divorce, taking the family somewhere else where they could use energy.
He's going to put him in
God.
a teepee over here.
No, but it's eye-opening.
It also, in a lot of ways, it should be considered into the cost of home ownership.
It absolutely
So
should.
when we look, we go get qualified for a house. We look at our monthly bills and what they cost per month. Why don't they look at a utility? Because you can't have a house without power. You can't have a house without water. But they don't.
You could, but you're back in.
And again, what does that mean in real estate? So when you're doing the real estate transaction, due diligence, right? The due diligence documents, you could ask for the Excel bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, what's the average of 12 months?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
We can get that.
Energy efficient homes outside of what we're talking about.
Heck, you could look at, I mean, at the end of the day, your tax assessment might go up because you have solar panels on the house versus not, right? And that you don't calculate that.
No. And it's one of the strategies we have for home buyers is we don't necessarily focus on the price of the home, but we focus on your cost of your monthly payment.
Monthly cost, right?
Because we can go get you a house in the same neighborhood.
Yes.
In Castle Rock, there's one street away, but the tax assessment is almost like 30% higher across the street.
Yep.
So that same house for $450 is going to cost you the same as a house for $500 across the street, just because the taxes are different. But we don't talk about that when it comes to energy costs.
$500. I mean, up north, I do a lot of stuff up north.
Yeah.
Dunes Park, Henderson, that whole area. You go across the highway. $3,000 difference in taxes.
Yes. So and that's why this is a big hot topic. Is
and people are trying to cut costs.
And in some ways, we can control a lot of this with, the decision to either get or not get solar, because we can effectively either set a cap on our monthly energy bill, or also maybe get a benefit of it.
And it comes down to the nasty word that I don't like and everybody doesn't like: budget.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're budgeting out.
But it is important.
It
right?
is very important. As much as we don't want to talk about it, it's very important.
And that's why we want to bring it up, because as we talk through buying or financing solar panels versus power purchase agreement versus leasing, the purpose is, number one, hopefully you guys go home and take a look at your energy bills, because
due diligence.
We took a look at ours and I was like, oh my God, like that was crazy. But I can't make a decision on if solar is right for me if I don't know what I'm paying, right?
Sure. Right.
And then I can't sit there and take a look at a new build that all of a sudden has, a power purchase agreement on it without knowing all the facts,
right? And
how it equates to what my current energy
case
bill
by
is.
case, because we're on a co-op, right?
Yes.
We're all on the co-op, but it's not far off from Excel.
No.
So
it's the same ballgame. And this came up with the PPA because we put a house on the market yesterday, or I think today. It went live today. And we didn't quite understand. So it had panels. We thought they were owned. Yeah. So
shameless plug, JC. What address is it? Do you know?
Wenatchee. It's in Southeast Aurora. Inspiration, gorgeous home.
Reach out to JC if you guys have questions.
Private tour, let us know. Stan, Brad said to put it on the market. So just before we get into like how this affects real estate transactions, buying panels benefits are, number one, either you buy them cash, which is going to be between $13K and $18K.
Which, by the way, that's down so far almost 53%.
Yes.
Over the last couple of years.
Yes,
so it has gotten a lot cheaper.
As we learn how to
and more efficient.
More efficient and more effective. You're going to be able to get the tax benefit. So there's like a 30% tax benefit that's nationally available.
Yeah. So Colorado's tax benefit expired, but the new Renewable Energy Act that was or Inflation Reduction Act that was signed brings back the federal tax benefit. So 30% up until it starts to tear down in 2033. So for the next 11 years, basically, right? If you decide that you want to finance and purchase your own solar panels, you can take advantage of a 30% tax
$20,000
rebate.
We're talking about $6K. So almost 50%. Like that's insane. That's a crazy.
Which your break-even point gets that much shorter. So which we'll talk about here in a second. But and then it tears down from 2033 through 2036. It goes down to 26%, 25, 24, 23%. So essentially, you have about 15 years-ish right now in the current bill to make that decision and reap those tax benefits.
Love it.
Again, you're a host if you're leasing or PPA.
Correct.
And you're not going to get those tax benefits.
Yes.
And then on top of that, with you buy panels, you can buy a battery pack.
Yep.
And now you're legit off the grid. So you can store your own energy you create with your panels and not have to be beholden to any energy company, whether they go out because of a power, outage, or, if it's too expensive. Like you control and own. This is the same thing with the rainwater stuff that came out. So you can put now like catch panels.
Yeah.
You basically are off the grid. You control your own costs and you can own your own energy you're producing with your own panels.
But again, do your homework, because that might not be best for you. Because it's longevity of ownership of home. Maybe leasing makes more sense. So we're not promoting go buy them, right? We're not. We're just giving information.
Pros and cons of each one.
Pros and cons, because leasing or PPA might be more beneficial for what your purpose of your home is.
Yep. So to Oscar's point, a very quick side note: if you were to finance solar panels, right, and we're not going to take the tax benefits in account. I'm just saying if you say $18,000 is what it's going to cost you to put solar panels on your house and you want to purchase and finance them, the average term is about 12 years.
Yeah.
Right.
12 to 14 years.
So that means that you're coming out of pocket $12,000 to $20,000, depending on the system, how many panels. You're going to finance it for 12 years. The average time somebody stays in a home is
5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years, right? So now if you take the tax benefit, you redo that calculation, you see how much you guys save per month. That's just data points for you to decide. A lease or a PPA, if the goal is to just lower your energy costs in general, but you don't want to necessarily come out of pocket, then that option may be the best for you because there's no upfront cost, right? You just pay that monthly rent or you pay the per kilowatt hour that's set by the third-party company. And that allows you to have the benefits of a lower utility cost without having the larger upfront cost. The difference is if you, again, going back to if I live in my house for 5 to 7 years, what does that look like when I go to sell my home? And that's what we're going to kind of talk about next. But those are two big differentiations as you guys are going through and you're having the solar panel people knock on your door, right. Questions to ask them as you decide to make a decision.
Am I buying? Am I leasing? Is this a PPA? Right. The last benefit with buying is any energy you produce above and beyond what you use for your home and household usage, you can actually sell back for credits on energy to the company that you're using.
Right.
I.e., like let's say you guys, I don't know if you remember the whole rollover minutes from T-Mobile.
Right.
So if you every month
do not make phone calls past
still,
7 p.m.
There's still countries that do it.
Oh really? Dang,
oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we're not. Yeah.
Hugo's a really weird country over there. Rollover minutes.
Hey, if you guys
You
don't
sell
know
a house in Hugo, all of a sudden you're the expert in Hugo. I don't even.
Listen, if you don't know where Hugo is and you're outside of Colorado, there's
Call
a reason
Oscar.
for that because I don't even think it shows up on Google Maps.
No,
But if you
Google
see
Maps,
Oscar
like really
rolling around, there's a 30% chance he's driving to Hugo. Just follow him.
Shameless plug. If you ever want to buy or sell a house in Hugo, we have the number one agent in Hugo right here.
There's also only one agent in Hugo.
But by number one agent, he sold 7 houses in the last 2 years there, so he's the number one agent.
Yes.
But yes, you can
Hugo.
Any energy you create that is above and beyond your usage, you can actually sell back for credits on future usage of energy.
Yes.
I.e., so in the summer, let's say you generate a ton of energy because it's
AC's
sunny
blasting
and it's really hot outside and we haven't had a cloud in the sky. But then you're only using half of the energy you're actually generating. Come January, where it's snowing, there's a blizzard, the cloud's out, you're using more energy because the heat's on and all the other nonsense. You're in the house more. If you use more energy than you're producing, then you get to use the energy you got credit for from the summertime now. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Over. So now, like as they said, real estate transactions. This is where it gets a little.
Yeah. What does that mean for real estate? I mean, this is great data.
Yeah.
I mean, the feel goods, minimize your carbon footprint, all that stuff. But what does it mean with the real estate transaction?
And that's where it gets complicated. So let's go ahead and get into 3 things. So I want to know, like, how you have panels on your house. Does it create more value? Number 2, what challenges does it have to sell a house?
Sure.
And number 3, like, is it worth it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we can break it down pretty simply, right? If you own the panels, you can add that to the value of your house.
Why is that?
Because essentially it is something that is benefiting the homeowner that is measurable over a long period of time, right? Because I can sit there and say that, if I own the panels on my home,
Mm-hmm.
then I can include the solar panels based on just standard appraisal requirements, which are going to kind of vary. If they're financed, right, it's a fixture of real estate. So essentially,
What does that mean by fixture of real estate?
It's attached to the property.
Bolted onto the house. Anything that's bolted onto the house is a fixture.
Yes.
Which means it's appliance or not.
It adds value to that.
It's conveyed with the property.
Correct.
Yeah. So if it's conveyed with the property, anything that's conveyed with the property, very similar to square footage or adding on a sunroom or anything like that, it's going to add to the value of the house.
Correct.
Right.
And if you own them,
yep,
you get the ability to sell energy back to the energy company.
Correct.
You have the ability to store the energy.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's actually there's a cost associated with that ownership. Right. So that value you're saying would be added to the appraised value of the home.
Correct.
And according to NAR, it's 4.1.
Somewhere around there. I mean, we looked it up.
National Association of Realtors. I can't remember if it was NAR or Zillow. They said 4.1% nationwide.
Both of them said that.
Right.
And on average, we looked at some appraisal values.
That's about right. If you think about the cost of the house, that's about right.
Yeah.
So what, like in a average house, Colorado, $550,000. What does that equate in value added on an appraised value of a home that when the panels are owned?
About 17, 20,000 maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
somewhere in there.
Done?
Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Easy math, right? So then what happens if you lease the panels or have a PPA in the panels? How does that add value to your appraised value of the home?
So and I may be going off topic, but what does that mean when you're trying to finance the house, right? Well, there's value there, but then you're talking about assuming a lease, assuming debt.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to affect your
loan.
loan.
How would that affect that?
Debt to income, because now you got to qualify for this. You got to qualify for their lease. You got to qualify and
so explain that, Oscar, a little bit more when you're saying
DTI,
qualify.
debt to income.
Yeah. So let's say I'm buying a $550,000 house and I have to assume a lease or a PPA on panels. How would that affect my qualification?
If so when it comes down to financing, the debt to income is you're allotted a certain amount of percentage. So if it's let's call it 32% with FHA,
Of
the
what?
front end of your housing expense.
So basically, like what you make in a month.
What you make in a month and what you're paying out, that's on credit. So your monthly payment and then what's on credit, car loan, etc.
Any loan, really,
Any
right?
loan
Any
that's
personal
gonna show up on credit.
Revolving credit.
Not your Excel bill, not your cable bill.
It's your revolving credit.
It's a revolving credit that's going to come up on credit. Now, say
So-
that's tight.
So let's say like you have a car payment, $450 a month.
Right.
You have a minimum monthly payment on the credit card,
Total.
$50.
Yeah.
You have a RV loan,
Student loan,
student loan.
because they haven't been forgiven yet.
They basically take all those, add them up.
HELOC.
Well, you don't own a home yet, right?
Oh,
So-
right. Well,
So let's say you
you're
made
selling.
$10,000 a month before taxes. You would basically take the ratio of what your monthly minimum payment obligations are, and divide that by your income,
Right.
and then that would be your ratio.
Right.
Correct. So if now,
Conservatively, typically,
Yeah.
let's say 50%.
so
Of what your potential payment
Mhm.
with PITA, right? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and what you're paying on credit. So you take that. The banks, again, the middle of the road on average, 50% back end, which is all of that. They don't want you to pay 50% what you make over that.
more than 50%.
Right.
So more than your income before taxes. So $10,000. That's $5,000.
Right.
So they don't want you to pay more than $5,000 in or more than that in housing.
Correct. Housing and
So like let's say that the lease payment you assume or the PPA payment you assume was $150 a month.
that might throw you off.
Yeah.
It might throw you off.
What would it like? Just examples, like how much would that change your qualification?
I mean, what do you mean? How does that change your qualification?
So let's say like you're buying a house for $550,
Mhm.
and you can qualify for a payment of $2,800 a month.
Okay.
If I added $150 a month in panels, what would your purchase price change?
Yeah, you might go back down to
another
500,000.
30,000.
Yeah.
You know,
500.
rule of thumb,
So as opposed to looking at for $550, now you're looking at $520.
Yeah.
right? And that's
Just because of panels.
right.
And it's important on both sides, right? From a seller standpoint,
Yeah.
it means that if you're leasing the panels, you may have to wait a little bit longer to sell the house to the right buyer that qualifies.
Because that same house for $550 really
they have to assume.
that same house
Correct.
at $550 is really $30,000 more.
Exactly. And if you're a buyer, that's something to take into account because you have to then qualify for that lease through your lender to make sure that you can afford that house. So
Right.
it does make it's not that it's not impossible, right? Like it's possible.
It's something to think about.
But it adds layers. And in a complicated transaction, like a real estate transaction, we like less layers. Like people like 7-layer cake or 7-layer dip, right? Something makes your mom makes
5-layer
7-layer
dip.
dip.
I
Your
think-
mom makes a good
yeah.
I went to
7-layer dip.
Costco. They don't have 7-layer. They have 5-layer.
But as a
Mom's
buyer and a
mom's good
seller,
cook.
I want like a 1-layer. Just give me chips and guac. That's all I need. I don't need the rest of that bullshit, right? But what this does is it still benefits, right? And that's where the cost benefit comes from. So for a real estate transaction, let's say you can afford it. Okay. So let's say you take it, it's $150 to JC's point, and you can afford it. It doesn't affect your DTI to the point where, yeah, you might get a little bit close, right? Or you may have to bring more money down, whatever it is. Now you have to weigh the cost of, okay, well, I can afford it. My monthly payment's going to be higher, but I'm going to save X amount in energy costs per month. And now that just turns into
cost analysis.
Another complication when it comes to looking at, do I want to buy this house?
But it's not just on the buy side.
No, it's on the sell side.
There's
too.
some buyers that do not want the solar panels. For some odd reason, some of the buyers that I had did not want them. And then you got to look at your fine print.
Hey, so by the way, if you live on a golf course, don't get solar panels if you're on the fairway.
Especially if I play on that
JC
course.
Dude, I'm going to see if Charlie...
your solar panels.
I'll see if Charlie can upload this photo I took out in Spring Valley Ranch in Elizabeth.
I will wreck some panels.
But on hole 15 on the fairway, there was one house that had solar panels, and it looked like a drive-by shooting happened on this dude's roof. And now he paid for all these panels, and you can't use them because they're absolutely
let's
shattered.
hope he leased them or had a PPA.
Yeah, let's hope he leased them so they their service agreements,
there
right?
There it is, right?
Their service
take care of it.
Maybe buying out's not the best. If you're on a golf course, lease those bad boys.
Yeah, especially, I mean, with me, I got a massive slice. It's not.
Let's not even talk about. I don't even drive. I use a hybrid.
So that's how it affects DTI, right? Yeah, and from appraisals, we know that it can add value depending on if you're financing versus leasing. DTI, we know that if you have to assume the lease, it's going to affect potentially as a buyer what you're qualified for, as a seller what your buyer pool is. So it affects both sides. So
appraisals, it could add value if you own them.
Yes,
right.
DTI
again, you're hosting.
DTI and qualifications. You may be able to qualify to buy the house, but you may not qualify for the lease/PPA agreement that's currently on the panels, which could eliminate some buyers from the pool.
Yep.
And we know that DTI, it could make that the home that you think you're buying at $550 actually is worth closer to like $580 because of the cost of the panels and your DTI.
And again, there's costs to these panels. There's roofing costs, right? If you got to redo the roof,
if you own them,
the company has to go out there, remove the panels, redo the roof, install the panels again.
Well, hey, what happens? I mean, Colorado every spring we deal with hailstorms, right?
I think Colorado's like the number one hail state.
Number three. Yeah,
That's crazy.
Number three
right?
hail claims. So and so ultimately, when we're selling a house or help someone buy a house, panels show up. It can be a pain point, which could definitely eliminate some buyers from the pool. And there's also some benefits, but if you don't understand them or don't get how to like talk about them or don't know how to transition from like past owner to new owner, it could cause problems.
Yep.
So it goes back into the shameless plug again, right? Like work with real estate professionals who know what they're doing, or have done this before, who have experience in this matter, that can get you from point A to point B with as little to no stress as possible. And we're your guys.
Yeah.
Have that conversation with the seller.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
upload the information so you
and be transparent. Be transparent, guys.
Absolutely.
If you are an agent,
disclosure.
If you're an agent that's listing a house that has solar panels, be as transparent as possible.
Do
because
your due diligence.
The most frustrating thing for a buyer, right, is to go through, love a house, see that they have, hey, we have solar panels. I've seen that, right? Yeah. Solar panels included. Well, what does that mean? So make sure that you guys are transparent. If you're a buyer, make sure you do your due diligence, because it can affect a lot of different things during a transaction, and work with agents that are willing to go and dig up that information to make sure. I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? So here's a side note on power purchase agreements. What we're seeing now is builders, like Oscar said earlier in the podcast, that will put solar panels onto houses and give you no choice. You buy the house, you buy the solar panels, right?
Oh, and by the way, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're green now. Congratulations. But you are purchasing the house with the solar panels. So, which is all fine and great. You save the money monthly, whatever it is. But at the end of that term, if in 5 years you want to sell the house, there are certain agreements with certain builders where the contract for the solar panels are either transferable or not transferable. If they're transferable, it just means that somebody else will overtake that agreement and things can go relatively smoothly, right? If it's not transferable, it means that that buyer is going to have to qualify to make sure that they can keep those panels on that house. And if you don't know that up front or don't know to ask that question, it could be a sticky situation where you sign a contract on a new build, you wait 9 months to get into your dream home, you live in it for 6 years, then you want to sell it, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, why is this so difficult, right? So make sure, and the whole purpose of this is to help you guys understand the differences so that you guys can ask the right questions when you're out looking for your home. Yep. And I think that's the biggest thing.
And
we
again,
can get across.
The buyers that don't want it, there are some companies where like, okay, we're going to charge you $17,000 to remove it and buy out the rest of the lease.
Exactly. Can you imagine that as a buyer? Like, hey, by the way, Oh,
It's
you
gonna cost
also
you 20 grand.
Why does my closing disclosure have me an extra? I was $20,000. Now I'm at $37,000.
Yeah.
Well, you got to buy out the lease
Well,
for the for the solar panels. It's happened before.
The shitty part, it's happened.
Yeah. So
ultimately, to kind of like summarize what we've been talking about with panels. So at the end of the day, there's value for solar panels.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There's a perceived value and there's actual value.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how you know that there's actual value. So like when we talk about PPAs and builders putting panels on the houses, they're putting the panels on the houses because they know that like if you take the house with the panels and you sign a PPA, that you're agreeing to pay for the discounted energy costs. They're not helping you out.
They're going to make money off of it.
They want to make a profit on you,
Right.
Because what they're doing is they're selling any excess energy that they generate
Mm-hmm.
from the panels to the energy company. And if they have enough houses to do that, that's a really, really, really good profit statement for that company.
Absolutely.
So actual value for solar panels. Number one, if you're gonna buy these panels, either you finance or buy them cash, you can actually control your own energy costs.
Yes.
Store it, batteries.
You produce your own energy. You put some batteries on it. If you have an electric car, imagine not paying gas ever.
Oh,
Like my gas bill for my truck was like $100 a week.
Remember that time that
It was more for gas than my car payment.
I owned a truck?
Yeah.
remember that time when Oscar had
Now I own a
one more kid and
Sad-
had to buy a bigger truck?
I went from a
face.
truck to a hybrid. Just
Smart
throwing it
move.
out there.
I'm not even
That's
going to say
also-
what I went to.
that's part of
It
the
was-
reason I drink whiskey.
Do your Olympic thing on your microphone again. I felt it. But
No.
yes, so if you own your panels, you own
There's going to have to be something in every podcast that at some point there's going to be some information that is just going to be, we're going to call it the limp dick fact of the day. And that's what it's going to be. Today is gas prices high. I lose my truck.
No, it was that meme that was going around. It was a Prius and a Bugatti, and the Prius said, "I get 90 miles per gallon. What do you get?" And the Bugatti says, "Laid." I mean,
I mean, I don't want to like piss Prius drivers off, but he's right.
but he's also a hybrid driver, so he understands the
That's true.
situation.
Yes.
Another
Anyway,
reason why
back
his
on
wife doesn't
topic.
like our podcast because the Prius driver. He basically is a Prius driver.
I like you
without
say
being
back
a-
on topic, like we just stay on topic all the time. This is why this is fun, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
So you own the panels, you get tax benefits.
Yep.
30% of the cost of the panels, you get tax benefits of it.
Correct.
There will eventually be more local benefits.
Yes.
I would venture to guess because in Colorado, like any other state, we want to get to 80% reduction in fossil fuels by 2030.
Correct.
So to do that, they have to incentivize it. Number two, you can sell the energy you don't use back to the power company. Number three, you have your own battery pack if you put it on there.
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely generate energy and
100%.
use it without having to pay anybody else. It's your own energy.
control.
Yeah, control.
You get control.
And number five, you have a
Did we skip number 4?
monetary value, and when you sell your house, you actually get a appraised value like of roughly
4%.
4%.
4%. Let's call it 4%.
And appraisers can see it. Everyone sees it, and that's actual value if you own your panels.
Correct.
They come with costs. If
Yeah.
your panels go out, you might have to do a servicing fee.
Just like anything else, your furnace goes out, you
Right.
have to fix
It's
it.
home ownership.
Yeah. So
Ownership.
what about perceived value?
I mean, perceived value essentially is this whole idea of, and we touched on it in the very beginning, right? When we talked about socioeconomic reasons why energy costs were going up, right? Everything is connected.
Mhm.
And a perceived value of going solar is having, a carbon footprint that's less. It's understanding that you're contributing to, the green energy revolution that some people will call it, and contributing to the greater good, big picture, saying, hey, we're going to move away from fossil fuels. It's a feel good fuzzy feeling, right? Which I think is great, right? And when you talk about perceived value, it's harder to quantify,
Mhm.
right? Because it's for you as a human being, individually. But the perceived value is essentially that I'm doing something that's going to benefit from a future standpoint in ways that I might not be able to see yet.
And I would venture to say that with perceived value, like right now today, the numbers bear out. Like you get panels, you're going to get the same money in, same money out. So you put money into it, you're not going to pay an energy bill.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. It's going to break even.
Well,
But if we get to a point of like tipping point where
Mm-hmm.
enough people have it, eventually it will be cool for the state of Colorado because we will now control our energy production from a state standpoint.
Correct.
We're not going to be affected by a war in Ukraine or Texas not being able to like figure that.
Well, and we
out
talked
their
about it
nonsense.
before the podcast, right? One of our biggest issues in Texas found this out when they froze. Hell froze over Texas.
Now we're okay.
This guy hates Texas. I love Texas.
I
Texas
go
is
back
awesome.
and
I
forth.
got-
He's
man.
also
I
never
go back
been,
and
family
he's
forth.
never
there.
been there.
What? What do you mean never been there?
You never lived there.
No, I've never
He had a
lived there.
layover
I've been there
once.
No, I have gone down 6th Street in Austin.
Well,
I don't remember a lot of it, okay? But I was there. He was also there. That's a whole other podcast of stories on that trip. But the point is that
I love
as we
Austin, Texas.
continue to 6th Street is fantastic.
It loves me too.
As we continue to move forward in the street, like we talked about before, Colorado's on an island when it comes to green energy, right? If you look at states like California, Arizona, and being able to share resources, ultimately that's the goal. And right now, it's going to depend on adoption rates, on how quickly this does. And we saw with Texas and a couple of other times this happened where if you've got a power grid that's very, very isolated and a catastrophic event happens, you see what happens to energy bills, to people's lives. I mean, there are stories of, again, this is crazy to me, but in Houston, Texas, people without AC for 3 days, and it was 42 degrees out, and you had all these different strifes that were happening. So I think that's the perceived value is as we continue to move forward, being able to bring everything together so that that doesn't happen again.
So what you're saying is actual value, do your due diligence.
Yes.
Do your due diligence. It's case by case.
Yes.
But in a whole, carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
We can agree that solar energy if you want to do what's best for the planet, that if that's your main goal,
Yep.
great.
And make that decision
But
based on
actual
your
value,
beliefs, 100%.
do your due diligence.
Exactly. And we're here to give you the facts to hopefully make this an easier decision for you guys to make one way or another. Because at the end of the day, that's what it turns into, right? So
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our rock takeaways. But before we do that, I want to hear your thoughts on the bourbon, because I want you to drink the bourbon first, and then after that, I want to hear your rock takeaway.
So one of JC's favorite phrases is, "It's not peer pressure.
It's just your turn.
It's just your turn."
Also, if you don't have peer pressure, you don't have friends.
Jeez. I don't know.
All right,
I have
Oscar.
nothing to contribute to that.
Go first.
Bourbon.
buddy. Yep.
It's light. It's on the sweeter side.
Yeah.
For 96 proof. I like it. It's a light, smooth drink.
Yep.
If I had to rate it, is that what we're doing? We're rating it right now.
Remember, our
10,
rock
10
rating.
being the worst, 1 being the best.
And you missed it last week. Jameson messed it up.
Well, no.
Did I mess it up last week?
Did he have more
Wow,
than
guys.
3 pours?
Wow. Okay. Thanks for telling me. Appreciate it.
He was on the verge. In the comments, let us know if you thought.
3. I
Three
like
rocks.
it.
Only 3 rocks.
3 rocks.
Okay.
I like it.
Jameson,
lot.
go ahead and hit it up.
All right. I'm gonna not mess this up this time. Thanks for telling me, guys. Appreciate it.
But you did break up something last week that I liked. So old fashioned wise.
Yeah, and that's what I'm gonna do. That's gonna be my thing now. So, I'll give it a rock rating just in general, right? And then I'm gonna tell you if I would use it in old fashioned.
I'm going to go ahead and say right now, I will use any bourbon you bring to my house. I don't care how rare, how expensive, how crappy, and make an old fashioned with it. That's just who I am. Fight me.
So,
I love old fashions.
On the next podcast, we will only have 2 members.
And again, my whole you thank you for every time there's a bourbon classification that's sort of
Yep.
who knows what's good and what's not good.
If we get him to taste enough, then I think we'll figure it
No,
out.
I've tasted a lot, but it's my number 1 rule. It's my number
It's a
1
weird
rule in
rule.
my
I don't
house.
like it.
It's also a weird quote.
I don't
You
like the
tasted
rule.
enough.
I don't like the rule. I don't like the
Whatever.
rule.
I will make an old fashioned
All right.
out of any bourbon you bring to my house, or any bourbon that I'll buy. I won't disrespect the stuff you bought,
I don't believe
but
you.
I will.
don't believe you.
I'll make an old fashioned out of the rarest
Yeah,
Pappy.
I don't believe you.
I don't
See,
care.
Get out of here.
I will. I just
So-
will. That's just me.
My rating. What did we rate last week? What was last week's?
It was the 12-year.
Right. What did I rate it?
You
I think
did. We did 2 rocks.
2 rocks, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say from a rock standpoint, I'm gonna go 2 rocks on this also.
Oh wow.
Wow.
I really am. From an old fashioned standpoint, I actually would not use this in an old fashioned
Oh.
because I think it's sweet. It's already pretty sweet,
Yeah.
right? You get the caramel tones. We got a little bit of vanilla. I think adding it into an old fashioned with bitters and with simple syrup or sugar, however you guys want to make that at home, I think it would actually make it a little bit too sweet. And
I agree.
Now, granted,
I'm going to agree with that.
I'm a rye person when it comes to old fashions because I
Templeton's
like to
Rye is my
have
favorite.
the whiskey nice and dry, and I want the sweetness to kind of balance that out. I actually think this is a little bit too sweet, and I would enjoy this straight up as we did or on 2 rocks.
I'm not gonna retract what I said, but I agree 100%.
Somebody kick Oscar out.
I'm gonna agree 100% with that. It probably wouldn't make the best old fashioned. It would be really sweet.
It's very
because
sweet.
it's very light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And old fashioned does have the bitters and
Yes.
the sweet and everything.
I just think it'd be a little much.
I'm super impressed. This is like for a.
Are we gonna get a 1 rock
Young
through week 3?
bourbon?
No way.
It's 3 years.
It is.
We had
For a young bourbon, it's
To be
really
honest,
good.
we don't know what Smoke Wagon is. Like they don't really disclose.
Yeah, true.
Because Smoke Wagon is made very similar to this, but for a small distillery in Castle Rock, nowhere, Colorado.
Nowhere.
Freaking fantastic.
It's great.
I have zero.
I'm
zero
gonna probably
complaints.
stick with a 4,
Ooh.
only
Okay.
because
I thought I was being
Yeah.
I do believe it doesn't have enough
body.
body.
Okay.
Like I taste the vanilla, I taste the caramel. I don't taste any of the chocolate.
Yeah. I tasted no chocolate.
I tasted no chocolate.
It doesn't give me like I don't know. I want my bourbon to give me a little of a burn, and maybe it's
Really?
maybe it's a little
No,
bit
yeah.
of a sweet like finish to it. Very easy to drink. Highly recommend it. I would 100% start using this for closings. It was also like $29.
Oh, that's great. For what?
Okay,
That
we
said,
need
it's
to
great.
discuss the price. Oh
Yeah,
my
that's
God.
great. And when you talk about the burn, like it's called Booker's. Booker's is
Yeah.
127 proof.
Different. Yeah.
That burn is actually it's part of the flavor.
Yeah.
So
4 rocks.
I'm gonna go 4 rocks.
Okay.
I went 3.
But it's really really good for the price.
I went 2, and
2.
now I actually feel better with my 2 based on the fact that it's $30.
Yeah, I didn't
So-
know it was $30.
Yeah.
My 3 is
Yeah.
Oh wait, hold
Close
on,
to
wait.
it.
So Jameson on your
Wait. We need
What?
Charlie.
Oh, Charlie, get in here.
We need the invisible hand too.
Invisible hand. Let's do this, and then Oscar on your one rock takeaway. What do you want to take away from today's pod?
do your due diligence. Due diligence on your solar panels. Work with an individual that knows what to look for and what questions to ask, and disclosure.
Jameson, I'm Russ.
I think I'm a big picture guy. I see all the different things that are happening in green energy. And I think that, yes, everybody needs to make the decision that's best for their specific usage. But at the end of the day, pay attention to what's happening globally, because too often we get tied into this kind of microeconomic thing, like what affects me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big problem, right? So if you look at green energy, I think it's a good exercise to say, okay, well, yes, this is what I'm doing. How does this affect everybody else around me? How am I contributing to the greater good? And I think solar power and these different things allow us to do that a little bit, which is not in our nature. So I think that's something that we need to focus on.
Says a man with a hybrid.
I got rid of my truck, okay?
I'm just saying.
This guy.
I'm a bit more bullish on the green stuff, mainly because I look at like cost and benefit ratios. So I think if I pay this, what do I get out? I believe that it makes sense at some point in time to like really look at gas prices, is driving a car, right?
Yeah.
Not natural gas prices. And there's no way that we're going to keep the same prices over time. We've seen it go up, we've seen it go down. If I want to control all the costs in my life, I would say that solar panels, if you bought them, are the number one factor in doing that, because you can control the cost of charging an electric car.
Mm-hmm.
I have lots of friends who have Teslas, and they cost them $14 from empty to full in the nighttime when low energy cost saving time is. So if you had panels on your house that you stored the energy, and it costs you nothing
Free
to store it, and then you put that into your car. Now for me, like, I have a 400 mile tank that would cost me $0. That's $400 a month times 12, right? That's a lot of freaking money. On top of that, I control my energy costs without anyone tell me what I can do. And the one thing that we know is true is over time, energy costs is going to keep going up.
Yeah.
So
my gas prices right now.
I'm going to sound very
Gross.
much like a Connie or like a guy who like super into solar or all this stuff.
Did you say Carney?
Connie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just
Communist, I guess. Right? What do you call those guys? But anyways, like ultimately, I look at the cost to debt income ratio of my life, and I think if I'm going to pay $285 a month for an electric bill, but if I paid that much to own panels, but then I didn't have to pay gas, and then I didn't have to worry about the fluctuations of energy and up and downs and things I can't control, wars here and freezes there.
Yep.
I think it makes total sense.
I agree.
But again, we're in Colorado. Right? It may not make sense in Alabama. It may not make sense in Kansas.
Texas.
It may not make sense in what's the really cloudy state? Oh, Seattle. So, yes, there's a lot of cool things that you can be done, and it adds value to your house.
Yep.
And so I think it's pretty cool.
So that being said, if anybody watching, right, wants to talk to Oscar, JC, myself, we're going to go round table real quick. Best way to get a hold of us. So Oscar, you first.
Oscar the Realtor. I'm getting okay.
Look
Oscar
at-
at
look at your camera,
OscarTheRealtor.com. 720-297-3823.
So Jameson Amaros, 720-584-3361. The Colorado real estate guy on Instagram and TikTok, or Jameson at metro5280-5280.com.
You can find me at JC Ortega.
Just
No.
look up
So
JC.
Bourbon hit.
In all fairness, I did change my names on the internet.
It's true.
Games. So JC
Phone number's the best, though.
JC at Metro 5280, 720-317-9437. And I did change the Instagram and the TikTok things.
We're getting him up to like the 20th
Yeah.
century, so I'm excited.
But
He's
check it
like,
out.
I'm hipping and a hopping.
But this is why I was confused.
TikTok.
JC Ortega, Realtor.
There it is.
Okay.
Cool.
Suckers.
Good.
Suckers.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Really, honestly, we couldn't tell you how much we appreciate all your support.
Yep.
I know that this has been ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but I cannot explain how much we appreciate all the support you've given us.
1,000%.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's been amazing. Please send us your reviews and your suggestions for different
Comments.
topics, as well as bourbon.
Yep.
And as always, cheers.
Cheers,
Cheers.
boys.
Go hug a tree. Solar.